New York City subway system is a labyrinth of tunnels, platforms, and secrets, sprawling across 472 stations, more than any other subway system in the world. I'd always been fascinated by its history, the way it snakes beneath the city like the veins of some ancient beast. My name is Elias, and I'm a freelance journalist with a penchant for urban exploration and a knack for stumbling into stories that don't want to be told. What I found last month in the underbelly of Manhattan wasn't just a story, it was a nightmare that's still clawing at the edges of my mind. It started with a missed train. I was at the 96th Street station on the 1 line, late for a meeting in Midtown. The platform was packed, the air thick with the usual mix of sweat, coffee, and impatience. When the train pulled away just as I reached the edge, I cursed under my breath and checked my phone. The next train was 8 minutes out. Too long. I needed to move. That's when I remembered hearing about a lesser-used station nearby, one I'd never bothered with before. I figured I'd try my luck there. I jogged a few blocks through the chilly October evening, weaving through pedestrians and food carts, until I reached a nondescript staircase descending into the earth. The sign above it was faded, the letters barely legible: 91st Street Station. Odd, I thought. I'd lived in New York for years and never heard of a 91st Street station. But I was in a rush, so I didn't think much of it. I descended. The stairs were steep, the concrete cracked and stained with decades of grime. The air grew colder as I went down, and the familiar hum of the subway was absent. No rumble of trains, no chatter of commuters. Just silence, broken only by the echo of my footsteps. At the bottom, I found a rusted turnstile and a dimly lit platform. The station was eerily empty, the kind of empty that feels like it's watching you. Tiles on the walls were chipped, some missing entirely, revealing patches of raw concrete. The overhead lights flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. I checked my phone for the train schedule. No signal. I opened Google Maps to confirm the station's location, but it showed me at 96th Street, as if I hadn't moved. I zoomed in, panned around, nothing. No 91st Street station. I tried another app, then another. Same result. A chill crept up my spine, but I brushed it off. Maybe it was an old station, decommissioned but still accessible. New York was full of relics like that. I paced the platform, my footsteps echoing unnaturally loud. That's when I noticed the map. It was mounted on the wall, yellowed and curling at the edges, sealed behind cracked glass. It looked ancient, the kind of thing you'd find in a museum. The lines and stations were familiar, but there, in faded ink, was 91st Street Station, on the 1 line, clear as day. I stared at it, my unease growing. Why was this station on an old map but not on any modern one? Before I could dwell on it, a low rumble filled the air. A train was coming. The sound was wrong, though, too slow, too heavy, like the grinding of stone on stone. Headlights pierced the darkness of the tunnel, and a train rolled into the station. It was old, not like the vintage cars the Transit Museum sometimes ran, but something older still. The cars were wooden, their paint peeling, windows fogged with grime. The doors creaked open with a groan, and a faint smell of decay wafted out. I hesitated. This didn't feel right. But I was late, and the idea of waiting in this creepy station for another train, if there even was another, was worse. I stepped aboard. The interior was dimly lit, the air thick with dust. The seats were worn leather, cracked and faded. The few passengers scattered throughout the car didn't look up as I entered. They were strange. Their clothes were outdated, suits with wide lapels, dresses with high collars, hats that hadn't been in style since the 1940s. One man, his face half hidden by a fedora, was reading a newspaper with a headline about the end of World War II. A woman in a floral dress stared blankly ahead, her hands folded neatly in her lap. A young boy in knickers clutched a toy train, his eyes fixed on the floor. I sat down, trying to shake the feeling that I'd stepped into a museum diorama. The train lurched forward, and the lights flickered. I glanced out the window, expecting to see the tunnel walls rushing by, but there was only darkness, an endless, inky void. No lights, no cables, no signs of the subway system I knew. My heart started to pound. "Excuse me," I said, turning to the man with the newspaper. "What station is this train headed to?" He didn't respond. Didn't even look at me. Just turned the page, the paper crinkling loudly in the silence. I tried the woman next. "Ma'am, do you know where this train is going?" She turned her head slowly, her eyes meeting mine. They were empty, like glass marbles. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the creaking of the train. "This isn't your time." I froze. Before I could ask what she meant, the train screeched to a stop. The doors opened, revealing another platform, just as dilapidated as the last. The sign above read, 91st Street Station. I blinked. Had we just gone in a circle? I stepped off, hoping to find my bearings, but the platform was identical to the one I'd left, same cracked tiles, same flickering lights, same ancient map on the wall. The train pulled away, leaving me alone. I checked my phone again. Still no signal. The time hadn't changed since I'd entered the station. I walked to the map, my hands trembling as I traced the lines. The 91st Street Station was there, but now I noticed something else. The map showed other stations I'd never heard of: Worth Street, 18th Street, South 4th Street. Names that didn't exist on any modern subway map. I needed answers. I remembered a thrift shop I'd visited a few weeks ago in the village, where I'd seen an old book about the subway's history. Maybe it could shed some light. I climbed the stairs, expecting to emerge onto the street, but the exit was boarded up, the wood splintered and rotting. Panic set in. I pounded on the boards, shouting for help, but the only response was the echo of my own voice. Desperate, I returned to the platform. Another train arrived, identical to the first. I boarded, hoping it would take me somewhere, anywhere else. The passengers were the same, their faces unchanged, their actions identical. The man turned the page of his newspaper. The woman stared ahead. The boy clutched his toy train. It was like watching a film loop. This time, when the train stopped, the sign read, Worth Street Station. I stepped off, my legs shaking. The platform was in worse shape than 91st Street, tiles shattered, walls covered in graffiti that looked decades old. A faint dripping sound echoed from somewhere in the darkness. I followed it, my flashlight app casting a weak beam. The dripping led to a maintenance door, rusted but slightly ajar. I pushed it open and found a narrow tunnel, its walls slick with moisture. At the end of the tunnel was a room, its floor littered with papers and debris. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, flickering like the ones on the platform. I picked up a crumpled document, a work order dated 1959, detailing the closure of the 91st Street Station due to structural concerns and low ridership. Another paper, a newspaper clipping, mentioned a derailment at the station in 1945, killing dozens. The article described the victims: a businessman reading a newspaper, a woman in a floral dress, a boy with a toy train. My blood ran cold. I looked at the other papers, letters, memos, all hinting at something darker. One mentioned temporal anomalies reported by workers during the station's closure. Another warned of passengers who don't belong appearing on trains. A final note, scrawled in frantic handwriting, read, "The station is a loop. They're trapped. Don't board the train." I stumbled back to the platform, my heart racing. The train was there again, doors open, the same passengers inside. I didn't get on. Instead, I ran, searching for another exit. I found a staircase, climbed it, and pushed through a rusted gate into a different tunnel. It stretched on forever, the air growing colder, the walls closing in. I don't know how long I walked, hours, maybe days. Time felt wrong, like it was bending around me. Finally, I saw light ahead. I emerged into another station, this one bustling with modern commuters. The sign read, 96th Street. I checked my phone. The time was exactly the same as when I'd entered the 91st Street station. I'd lost no time at all that I went back to that thrift shop the next day, desperate for answers. The book I'd seen was still there, its pages brittle and yellowed. It confirmed what I'd feared. The 91st Street station was closed in 1959 after a derailment that killed 47 people. The station was deemed unsafe and sealed off, erased from maps to prevent confusion. But the book mentioned rumors, whispers among workers of trains that still ran, carrying passengers who never left. Some called it a ghost loop, a pocket of time where the dead relived their final moments. That I tried to find the station again. I walked every block around 91st Street, searched every alley. Nothing. No staircase, no sign. It was like it had never existed. But at night, when I close my eyes, I hear the rumble of that train, see those passengers staring into nothing. And sometimes, when I'm on the subway, I feel it, a pull, like something's calling me back to that platform that I don't ride the one line anymore. I can't. Because deep down, I know, the 91st Street station is still out there, waiting. And if I find it again, I might not come back. The days after my escape from the 91st Street station were a blur of sleepless nights and obsessive research. My apartment, a cramped studio in Harlem, became a war room of sorts, papers strewn across the floor, a corkboard pinned with notes, clippings, and a photocopy of that ancient subway map I'd found in the thrift shop. I couldn't shake the memory of the train, the passengers, or the suffocating sense that I'd brushed against something I wasn't meant to see. My name is Elias, and I'd always chased stories, but this one was chasing me back. That I stopped taking the subway. The thought of descending into those tunnels made my stomach churn. Instead, I walked or took buses, even if it meant hours added to my commute. But New York's a city that doesn't let you hide. The subway's pulse is everywhere, its rumble underfoot, its screech in the distance. And every time I passed a station entrance, I felt it, a tug, like a hook in my chest, pulling me toward the dark. That I told myself I was done with it. I'd write the story, publish it, and move on. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized the 91st Street station wasn't just a forgotten relic, it was a wound in the city, bleeding secrets no one wanted to touch. My first lead came from the thrift shop book, Under the City, A History of New York Subways. It was dense, academic, and frustratingly vague about the 91st Street station, mentioning only the 1945 derailment and its closure in 1959. But it listed an author, Dr. Margaret Hensley, a historian who'd worked at the New York Public Library's archives in the 1970s. If anyone knew more, it was her. Finding Hensley wasn't easy. She'd retired years ago, and her name barely existed online. After days of dead-end calls and emails, I tracked her down to a nursing home in Brooklyn. I took a bus across the river, my bag stuffed with notes and that photocopied map. The home was a squat, beige building that smelled of antiseptic and overcooked vegetables. A nurse led me to a common room where an elderly woman sat by a window, her hair a wispy halo of white, her hands folded over a worn book. Dr. Hensley? I asked, approaching cautiously. She looked up, her eyes sharp despite her frail frame. "You're the one who called about the subway," she said, her voice steady but guarded. "Elias, was it?" I nodded, pulling up a chair. "I read your book. I need to know about the 91st Street station." Her expression darkened. She glanced around the room, as if checking for eavesdroppers, then leaned closer. "You've been there, haven't you?" I froze. "How did you?" "It's in your eyes," she said. "The same look I saw in the mirror after I found it. You didn't just read about it. You walked its platform." I swallowed hard, my heart racing. "What is it? Why isn't it on any map?" Hensley sighed, her fingers tightening around her book. "It's not just a station, Elias. It's a crack in time. A place where the city's past doesn't let go. The derailment in 45 wasn't an accident, it was a consequence. They built that station on unstable ground, geologically and otherwise. Workers reported things during construction, tools vanishing, voices in the tunnels, shadows that moved on their own. The transit authority ignored it, pushed the project through. But after the derailment, they couldn't ignore it anymore." "What happened?" I asked, leaning forward. 47 people died, she said. But it wasn't just the crash. Survivors reported strange things, passengers who weren't on the manifest, trains that appeared out of nowhere. The authority sealed the station, erased it from records. But it didn't go away. It's still there, looping through time, trapping anyone who steps inside. I thought of the passengers on that train, the man with the newspaper, the woman with the empty eyes, the boy with the toy train. Trapping them how? Hensley's gaze grew distant. They're stuck, reliving their final moments. The station's a cage, and the train's its engine. If you board it, you risk becoming part of it. I got out, like you did. But others, she trailed off, her hands trembling. "Did you see it?" I asked. "The station?" She nodded slowly. "In 1972. I was researching for my book, found an old map in the archives. I went looking, like you did. I boarded the train. Saw the passengers. I got off at the next stop, but it wasn't a stop, it was the same station, over and over. I barely made it out. And when I went back to find it again, it was gone." I pulled out the photocopied map, spreading it on the table. "This is the map I found. It shows 91st Street, Worth Street, others. Are they all like this?" Hensley's eyes widened as she traced the faded lines. "Where did you get this?" "A thrift shop in the village." "Why?" "This isn't just any map," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's one of theirs. The authority burned most of them after the closures, but a few survived. They show the stations that don't belong, stations that shouldn't exist." I felt a chill. "What do you mean, don't belong?" She hesitated, then said, "The subway was built on more than just rock and steel. The city's old, Elias. Older than people realize. There are places, pockets, where time doesn't work right. The stations on this map were built on those pockets. They were mistakes. The authority tried to erase them, but you can't erase something that's already part of the loop." I sat back, my mind reeling. "So what do I do? I can't stop thinking about it. I feel like it's calling me." Hensley grabbed my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "Don't go back. If you do, you might not come out. The station wants you. It's hungry." I left the nursing home with more questions than answers, her warning echoing in my head. But I couldn't let it go. The story was too big, too real. I needed proof, something concrete to show the world. And deep down, I knew I needed to understand why the station had let me go, why I wasn't trapped like the others. That I spent the next week scouring records at the New York Public Library, digging through microfilm and dusty files. Most of the information on the 91st Street station was redacted or missing, but I found fragments: a 1946 memo about unexplained phenomena in the tunnels, a 1959 report on the station's closure citing temporal disturbances, a grainy photo of the derailment showing a train car twisted in ways physics couldn't explain. The more I read, the more I realized Hensley was right. This wasn't just a forgotten station. It was something else entirely. That I also tracked down a retired MTA worker named Carl Delgado, who'd been a maintenance supervisor in the 1980s. He agreed to meet me at a diner in Queens, a greasy spoon with flickering neon signs. Carl was in his late 60s, wiry, with a face etched by years underground. He listened to my story, his expression unreadable, then lit a cigarette despite the "no smoking" sign. "You're not the first to ask about 91st Street, he said, exhaling a cloud of smoke. "Back in '83, a couple of my guys refused to work the tunnels near there. Said they heard things, voices, footsteps, trains that weren't on the schedule. One guy, Eddie, swore he saw a train pull into a sealed platform. He quit the next day." "Did you ever see it?" I asked. Carl shook his head. "I stayed away. My grandpa worked the subway in the 40s. He told me stories about 91st Street, said it was cursed. After the derailment, they found things in the wreckage. Bodies that didn't match the passenger list. Clothes from the 1800s, even earlier. The authority hushed it up, said it was looters or squatters. But Grandpa said they were wrong. He said those people weren't from our time." I showed him the map. His eyes narrowed. "Burn that," he said. "It's bad luck. You keep poking around, you'll end up like Eddie, or worse." I didn't burn it. Instead, I went back to 91st Street. I had to. The pull was stronger now, a constant hum in my chest. I waited until midnight, when the city was quieter, and walked the blocks around 96th Street, searching for that staircase. I checked every alley, every corner. Nothing. Just like before, the station had vanished, but then I saw it, a flicker, like a glitch in reality. A street lamp blinked out, and when it came back on, there it was, the faded sign for 91st Street Station, half hidden behind a dumpster. I approached, my pulse pounding. The staircase was there, descending into darkness. I took a deep breath, checked my flashlight, and went down. The station was exactly as I remembered, cracked tiles, flickering lights, that oppressive silence. The map on the wall was still there, its glass even more cracked than before. I studied it, noting the other stations, Worth Street, South 4th Street, 18th Street. If Hensley was right, they were all part of this loop. I wanted to understand it, to map it out, but first, I needed to survive. The rumble came again, that same grinding sound. The train pulled in, its wooden cars creaking, its windows fogged. I hesitated, remembering Hensley's warning. But I needed answers. I stepped aboard. The passengers were the same. The man with the newspaper, the woman in the floral dress, the boy with the toy train. They didn't acknowledge me, their movements mechanical, like wind-up dolls. I sat across from the woman, watching her closely. Her lips moved slightly, as if whispering to herself. I leaned closer, straining to hear. "You shouldn't be here," she said again, her voice a faint rasp. "This isn't your time." "Where are we?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What is this place?" Her head turned, her empty eyes locking onto mine. "The loop," she said. "It holds us. It keeps us. You'll stay, too, if you don't leave." The train lurched, and the lights flickered. I stood, my heart racing, and moved to the door. It opened onto another platform, Worth Street again. I stepped off, the air colder than before. The platform was different this time, though. The graffiti was fresher, the dripping louder. I followed it to the same maintenance door, but now it led to a different tunnel, longer and narrower, its walls carved with strange symbols, circles within circles, lines that seemed to shift when I looked at them. At the end was another room, larger than the last. It was filled with relics, rusted tools, old tickets, a conductor's hat. In the center was a table, and on it, a ledger. I opened it, my hands shaking. It was a log of trains passing through 91st Street, dated from 1945 to 1959. The entries were normal at first, times, passenger counts, but toward the end, they grew erratic. Train 47 never arrived, one read. Passengers reported at Worth Street, no record of boarding, said another. The final entry, dated the day the station closed, was just one word, lost. I flipped through the pages, finding sketches of the passengers I'd seen, the man, the woman, the boy. Their names were listed: Harold Grayson, Evelyn Carter, Timothy Wells. Below each was a note: deceased, 1945 derailment. My stomach dropped. They weren't just trapped, they were dead, caught in some endless replay of their final moments. That I heard the rumble again. The train was coming. I ran back to the platform, but this time, the train didn't stop. It slowed, its doors staying closed, and I saw the passengers inside, their faces pressed against the windows, staring at me. Their eyes weren't empty anymore, they were pleading. That I stumbled back, tripping over a loose tile. When I looked up, the train was gone, but the platform had changed. The tiles were newer, the lights brighter. A sign above read, South 4th Street Station. I checked my phone, no signal, no time change. I was deeper in the loop now, and I didn't know how to get out. The next hours, or days, I couldn't tell, were a descent into madness. The stations kept changing, each one a different piece of the loop. At South 4th Street, I found newspaper clippings about a fire in 1920 that killed a dozen workers. At 18th Street, I found a diary written by a conductor who claimed the tunnels sang to him, telling him to stay. Each station had its own story, its own ghosts, but they all led back to 91st Street. That I tried to keep track of time, but my phone was useless, and my watch had stopped. I ate the granola bars in my bag, drank from a leaking pipe in one of the tunnels. I was exhausted, but sleep felt dangerous, like it would anchor me to the loop. I kept moving, searching for an exit, but every staircase led to another platform, every tunnel to another station. The passengers started to notice me. At first, they just watched, their eyes following me as I passed. Then they started speaking. "Stay," the boy whispered, clutching his toy train. "It's easier if you stay," the woman said, her floral dress stained with ash. The man with the newspaper never spoke, but his eyes burned with something like anger. I found more rooms, more relics. A locket with a photo of a young couple, dated 1904. A ticket stub for a train that never existed. A map, identical to mine, but with my name written in the margin. That one made me sick. I tore it up, scattered the pieces, but when I looked back, they were gone, as if the station had eaten them. The loop wasn't just a place, it was alive. It watched me, tested me. I felt it in the way the lights flickered, the way the tunnels seemed to shift when I wasn't looking. It wanted me to stay, to become another passenger, another ghost. But I refused. I had to get out. I don't know how long I wandered before I found the control room. It was at 91st Street, behind a door I hadn't noticed before. Inside was a panel of switches and dials, covered in dust, and a single chair facing a cracked monitor. I sat down, my hands shaking, and flipped a switch. The monitor flickered to life, showing grainy footage of the platform. The train was there, the passengers inside, their movements identical to every other time that I flipped another switch, and the footage changed. It showed the 1945 derailment, metal twisting, sparks flying, screams echoing. I watched, horrified, as the passengers, Harold, Evelyn, Timothy, were thrown from their seats, their bodies crumpling. But then the footage looped, and they were back in their seats, unharmed, repeating the same actions. The crash played again, then reset. Over and over. I realized what the loop was, a moment frozen in time, replaying endlessly. The station was the anchor, the train the mechanism. And I was caught in it, a living intruder in a dead world. I searched the room for anything that could help. In a drawer, I found a manual, its pages brittle. It described the subway's temporal stabilization system, an experimental technology from the 1950s meant to synchronize the tunnels. The notes were cryptic, but one line stood out: to break the loop, the anchor must be destroyed. I didn't know what the anchor was, but I had a guess: the map. It was the only constant, the thing that tied me to the station. I pulled it from my bag, staring at the faded lines. If I destroyed it, would I be free? Or would I be trapped forever? The rumble came again. The train was back. I ran to the platform, clutching the map. The doors opened, and the passengers stared at me, their eyes desperate now. "Don't," the woman said. "You'll trap us all." I hesitated, my hands trembling. Then I tore the map in half. The station shook, the lights flickering wildly. The train screeched, its doors slamming shut. The passengers screamed, their voices merging into a single, deafening wail. The platform cracked, tiles falling into darkness below. I ran, the station collapsing around me. I found a staircase, climbed it, my lungs burning. The shaking stopped, and I emerged onto a quiet street, the city lights bright above me. I was back at 96th Street. My phone buzzed, signal restored. The time hadn't changed. I haven't gone near a subway since. I burned the rest of my notes, deleted my drafts. The story will never be published. Some truths are too heavy to share. But I still feel it, the pull, weaker now, but there. I dream of the train, the passengers, the station. I see their faces, hear their voices. I don't know if I broke the loop or just escaped it. I don't know if the passengers are free or still trapped, reliving their deaths. But I know one thing: the city's full of cracks, places where time doesn't work right. And if you're not careful, you might fall through. I woke in a cold sweat, the screech of the train clawing at my mind. My apartment was dark, the clock stuck at 3:17 a.m., same as when I'd stumbled out of the 91st Street station 3 weeks ago. My phone showed the same frozen time, as if the world refused to move forward. My name is Elias, and I thought I'd escaped the loop by tearing the map and replacing it in that cursed machine, guided by Vincent's cryptic instructions. But the city doesn't let go. The station's mark was on me, a heavy pulse in my chest, like a second heart beating out of sync. I avoided mirrors, terrified I'd see Harold Grayson's fedora, Evelyn Carter's hollow eyes, or Timothy Wells clutching his toy train, whispering, "Stay." I couldn't function. My editor, Sarah, stopped calling after I ghosted her deadlines. My friends thought I was unraveling, and they weren't wrong. New York felt alien now, its streets too sharp, its shadows too alive. I'd catch glimpses, a staircase flickering in an alley, a sign that vanished when I blinked. One night, crossing Broadway, I heard a child's giggle, high and wrong, and saw a toy train roll across the sidewalk, stopping at my feet. I kicked it away, heart hammering, but when I looked back, it was gone. The bodega clerk swore he saw nothing. I burned my notes, the photocopied map, Dr. Hensley's book, everything. But the memories clung like damp rot. The passengers haunted my dreams, their voices seeping into waking hours. I'd hear them in the hum of traffic, the creak of my floorboards. Come back. I stopped taking the subway, walking miles to avoid those tunnels, but the city's pulse mocked me. The rumble of trains vibrated underfoot, the screech of brakes echoed in the distance. Once, I found a ticket stub in my pocket, dated 1945, stamped 91st Street Station. I tore it to pieces, but the next morning, it was back, whole, in my coat that I was marked. The loop wasn't just in the station, it was in me, leaking into my reality. Vincent had warned me, the loop's unstable now. I felt it spreading, a crack in time widening with every step I took. I couldn't run from it. I had to face it. It was a rainy Tuesday night, my arms heavy with groceries, when I saw her. I passed the 96th Street subway entrance, but the sign above read 91st Street Station, its letters glowing faintly, like embers in the dark. I froze, my breath catching, ready to bolt, when a voice cut through the drizzle. You see it, don't you? I turned to find a girl under a street lamp, her face half hidden by a hood. She was young, maybe 20, with pale skin and eyes that held too much weight, like she'd seen centuries. Her patchwork jacket and handmade boots were odd, dotted with symbols I recognized from the station's walls, circles within circles, lines that twisted like veins. She clutched a notebook, its pages yellowed, edges curling like ancient parchment. Who are you? I asked, my voice unsteady. Lila, she said, stepping closer, her boots silent on the wet pavement. I've been watching you, Elias. You're marked by the loop. I can feel it, rust and old time clinging to you. I gripped my grocery bag tighter, the plastic crinkling. How do you know my name? What do you know about the loop? She held up her notebook, its cover worn but pulsing faintly, as if alive. I've been mapping it. The cracks in time, the stations that don't belong. I found 91st Street a year ago, got trapped, got out. But it never lets go completely. You know that. Her words hit like a blade. She was like me, a survivor, but there was something wrong about her. Her movements were too fluid, her eyes too knowing, like she was part of the city's shadow. Why are you here? I demanded, to help you, she said, her voice steady despite the rain. You tore the map, Elias. You didn't close the loop, you broke it. It's spreading, bleeding into other stations, other times. If we don't stop it, it'll swallow everything. I laughed, a brittle sound swallowed by the rain. Stop it? I barely survived. What makes you think we can? Lila's gaze didn't waver. I know how. Meet me here tomorrow, midnight. Bring nothing but yourself. The loop's hungry, and you're its anchor now. She turned, her form blurring in the rain, and vanished into the dark. I called after her, but the city ate her voice. I went home, groceries forgotten, and spent the night staring at my ceiling, her words looping endlessly. I didn't want to go back. Every instinct screamed to flee, to leave New York and never return. But Lila's certainty, her calm in the face of the impossible, hooked me. If she was right, I was the problem, and the only solution that I spent the next day preparing. I bought a heavy-duty flashlight, a switchblade, a small recorder to capture evidence. I wrote a letter to Sarah, sealing it in an envelope with instructions to open it if I didn't return. At 11:30 p.m., I headed to 96th Street, the rain gone but the air heavy with anticipation. The sign was there again, 91st Street Station, its glow sharper, like it was waiting. Lila stood at the top of the stairs, her notebook tucked under her arm, her eyes glinting in the dark. Ready? She asked, her voice cutting through the city's hum. No, I admitted, gripping my flashlight. But I'm here. We descended, the air thickening, cold biting at my skin. The platform was wrong, tiles slick with black ichor, lights flickering with a green pulse. The map on the wall was gone, replaced by a crack that wept green light, its edges pulsing like a wound. The air vibrated, a low hum that set my teeth on edge, like the city was singing a dirge. Lila opened her notebook, revealing sketches of the station, the symbols, and the machine I'd seen before. Her notes were in a script I couldn't read, curling like the symbols on the walls. "The loop's not just time," she said, her voice low. "It's a prison, built to hold things that don't belong, things older than the city, older than us." The map was a lock. "You broke it, and now the prison's crumbling." "What kind of things?" I asked, my breath fogging in the cold. She didn't answer, just pointed to the tunnel. "We need to reach the core. The machine's damaged, but it's still running. We have to shut it down." A rumble shook the platform, louder than before, the ground trembling underfoot. The train pulled in, its wooden cars splintered, windows cracked, leaking green light. The passengers were there, Harold, Evelyn, Timothy, but they were wrong. Harold's face was stretched, his eyes too large, glowing green. Evelyn's dress hung in tatters, her hands clawing at the air, fingers too long. Timothy's toy train scuttled across the floor, its wheels sprouting legs like a beetle, its eyes glinting with malice. "Don't look at them," Lila said, grabbing my arm. "They're not human anymore. They're the loop's hunger." We boarded, the air inside thick with decay, the smell of rot and metal. The passengers didn't move, but their eyes followed me, their whispers slithering into my mind. "Stay. Join us." I gripped my flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom, revealing faces in the walls. Passengers pressed into the wood, their mouths open in silent screams. Lila pulled me to the back of the car, her notebook open. "Focus," she said, sketching furiously. "The loop's trying to claim you. Fight it." The train lurched, windows blackening with a void that pulsed with intent. The lights flickered, and the passengers moved, their motions jerky, like marionettes on frayed strings. Harold stood, his newspaper dissolving into ash, his face splitting to reveal a maw of green light. Evelyn's hand stretched toward me, nails like blades. Timothy's toy train crawled up the seat, its legs clicking, its eyes fixed on me. "Run!" Lila shouted, pulling me to the door. We stumbled onto the next platform, Worth Street, but twisted. The tiles pulsed like flesh, the walls dripping black ichor that hissed when it hit the ground. Voices filled the air, not human but ancient, chanting in a tongue that burned my ears. The platform stretched, warping, the exits vanishing as we ran. Lila flipped through her notebook, her hands steady despite the chaos. "The core's deeper now," she said. "The loop's reshaping itself to keep us out. Stay close." We ran through tunnels that twisted impossibly, walls closing and then expanding, symbols glowing and shifting like living things. The chanting grew louder, the air heavier, pressing against my chest. We reached a door, stone and massive, carved with faces that screamed silently, their eyes following us. Lila pressed her hand against it, whispering words that made the air ripple, and it opened with a groan that echoed like a dying beast. The chamber beyond was a nightmare. The machine was there, but it had grown, its gears towering, its wires writhing like veins, pulsing with green light. Trains circled above on tracks that spiraled into the dark, their headlights burning my skin. The floor was littered with relics, bones, watches stopped at 3:17, photographs of faces that flickered and changed. The passengers were in the walls, their forms pressing through stone, hands reaching, mouths singing a song that tore at my sanity. Lila gripped my hand, her touch cold but grounding. "Don't look at them," she said. "They're the loop's teeth. They'll pull you in." I nodded, my heart pounding. "What do we do?" She opened her notebook, revealing a final page, a sketch of the machine with "sacrifice" circled in red. "The loop needs an anchor," she said. "The map was one, but you broke it. Now it's you. To shut it down, we have to break that tie." Me? I whispered, horror sinking in. You're bound to it, she said. When you tore the map, you became part of the mechanism. We need to sever that bond, but the loop will fight. She led me to the machine, its hum deafening, the air crackling with static. The trains above sped up, their wheels screeching, sparks raining down. The passengers broke free from the walls, crawling toward us, their forms twisting, Harold's face a mass of eyes, Evelyn's hands sprouting tendrils, Timothy's toy train growing legs and teeth, scuttling like a spider. Lila pulled a knife from her jacket, its blade ancient, etched with symbols that glowed. Hold them off, she said, pressing it into my hand. I need time. I swung the knife, slashing at Evelyn's tendrils. They dissolved into ash, but more came, the passengers multiplying, their forms becoming less human, limbs too long, mouths too wide, eyes that bled green light. I fought, my arms burning, blood dripping from a gash on my leg where Timothy's train bit me, its teeth sinking deep. Lila. I screamed, the chamber shaking, stones falling from the ceiling. Hurry. She worked at the machine, her hands glowing as she pressed them against the gears, whispering in that alien tongue. The trains derailed, crashing into the walls, their screams blending with the passengers. The air split with cracks of light, the symbols on the walls burning brighter. I stabbed at Harold's form, his eyes exploding into sparks, but more passengers surged forward, their hands clawing at my skin, their voices chanting, "Stay! Stay! Stay!" Lila's voice cut through the chaos. Elias, you have to let go. The loop's in you, reject it. I closed my eyes, the knife slipping from my hand. I saw my life, my apartment, Sarah's voice, the city's heartbeat. I saw myself, Elias, not the loop's anchor but a man fighting to live. I screamed, a raw, defiant sound, and the passengers recoiled, their forms flickering like static. Lila slammed her hands against the machine, and it erupted in light. The trains froze, the walls cracked, and the passengers dissolved, their screams fading into silence. The chamber collapsed, stones tumbling, but Lila grabbed me, pulling me through a tunnel that opened like a gash in reality. We emerged onto 96th Street, the city quiet, the air cool. My phone buzzed, signal restored, time ticking forward. I turned to Lila, gasping. Did we do it? She nodded, her face pale, her eyes dimming. The loop's closed. You're free. I reached for her, my voice hoarse. Who are you, really? She smiled, a faint, fleeting thing. A traveler, Elias. Like you, but older. Keep moving. Don't look back. Her form flickered, like a signal breaking, and she stepped into the shadows. Her notebook fell, pages blank, symbols gone. I called her name, but the city swallowed it. I don't ride the subway anymore. I can't. But I see things, green light flickering in station entrances, shadows that move like passengers. I hear the trains rumble, faint but persistent, under my feet. The loop's closed, but the city's still cracked, and I'm not sure if I'm free or just waiting for the next station to claim me.
My name is Tara, and I've worked the graveyard shift for Chicago's CTA maintenance crew for 6 years. The subway's a beast, miles of tunnels, rusted tracks, and secrets buried deeper than the city's foundations. I've seen my share of weird. Rats the size of cats, graffiti that seems to move when you're not looking, lights that flicker for no reason. But nothing prepared me for what I found in the tunnel off the Blue Line last month. It wasn't just a tunnel. It was a mouth, and it's been swallowing me ever since that IT started on a freezing November night, the kind where the wind off Lake Michigan cuts through your jacket like a knife. I was assigned to inspect a section of track near the Clark/Lake station. A routine check for loose bolts and cracked ties. The air was thick with the usual subway smells. Oil, metal, and something sour you learn to ignore. My flashlight beam danced across the rails, catching flecks of rust and the occasional discarded coffee cup. Then I saw it. A gap in the tunnel wall just past a curve where there shouldn't have been one. No door, no grate, just a jagged hole like the concrete had been clawed open. I checked my blueprint, a crumpled sheet I kept in my tool bag. No mention of a branch tunnel here. The CTA's maps are meticulous. Every inch of the system is documented. This wasn't right. I should have radioed it in, but curiosity got the better of me. I stepped through the gap, my boots crunching on loose gravel, and the air changed, colder, heavier, with a faint hum that vibrated in my chest. The tunnel was narrow, its walls smooth and slick, like they'd been polished by something other than machines. My flashlight caught strange markings, spirals and jagged lines, etched deep into the stone, glowing faintly when my beam lingered too long. They weren't graffiti. They were too precise, too deliberate, like a language I couldn't read. I ran my fingers over one, and it pulsed under my touch, warm and alive. That's when I heard it. A whisper, soft but clear, saying my name. Tara. I spun around, my flashlight sweeping the dark. Nothing. Just the tunnel stretching into blackness. My radio crackled, but when I tried to call my supervisor, it was dead, spitting static. The whisper came again, not from one direction but all around, like the walls themselves were speaking. Tara, come deeper. The voice wasn't English, it was something older, guttural, but I understood it like it was pulling the words straight from my mind. My skin prickled, but I couldn't turn back. The tunnel had me, and it knew it that I walked, the whispers growing louder, overlapping into a chorus of voices. Men, women, children, some weeping, some laughing, all calling me. They knew things. The time I stole money from my mom's purse when I was 12, the night I drove drunk and nearly hit a pedestrian, the fight with my brother that left us estranged. Join us, they said. Sing with us. My flashlight flickered, the beam dimming, and the symbols on the walls glowed brighter, pulsing in time with the voices. I don't know how long I walked, minutes, hours. Time felt wrong, like it was bending around me. The tunnel opened into a chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness, its floor littered with debris. Old tickets, rusted tools, a child's shoe. In the center was a pit, its edges jagged, and the whispers poured from it, a cacophony that made my head throb. I leaned over, my flashlight barely piercing the dark, and saw something move, a mass of shadows writhing like smoke, with eyes that glinted like wet glass. That I stumbled back, my heart pounding, and tripped over a leather-bound book half buried in the dirt. Its pages were brittle, the ink faded, but I could make out sketches of the symbols, notes in a shaky hand. The chorus binds it. Don't listen. Don't sing. It was dated 1927, signed by someone named Amos Reed, a CTA worker who'd vanished during the subway's early days. The last page read, "The tunnel wants a voice. It takes yours if you give it." The whispers surged, and the shadows in the pit rose, forming shapes, people but wrong. Their faces were blank, their mouths moving in sync with the voices, their hands reaching for me. I ran, clutching the journal, the tunnel twisting behind me, the walls closing in. I don't know how I made it out, but I emerged onto the Clark/Lake platform, gasping, my flashlight dead. My watch said 3:17 a.m., same as when I'd entered. My radio crackled to life, my supervisor yelling about where I'd been. I lied, said I'd gotten turned around. I didn't tell him about the voices or the shadows that followed me home in my peripheral vision. That night, I tried to sleep, but the whispers found me. I woke up in my bed, but it wasn't my apartment. It was the tunnel, the symbols glowing on my walls, the pit yawning in the floor. I screamed, and my room snapped back, but the whispers lingered, faint but there. Every night since, I've woken in that tunnel, no matter where I sleep, my apartment, a motel, my brother's couch. The voices are louder now, mimicking my mom, my coworkers, even me, their words dripping with my secrets. You failed her. You lied. Join us. I went back to work, hoping routine would ground me, but the subway was different. Stations vanished, Monroe gone one day, back the next. Commuters stared at me, their eyes too bright, their mouths moving silently. I found Amos's journal in my bag, though I'd locked it in a drawer. Its pages had new entries in my handwriting. The chorus needs you. Sing. I burned it, but the next day it was back uncharred. Desperate, I tracked down a retired CTA engineer, Dolores Kane, who'd worked the tunnels in the 80s. She lived in a cluttered apartment in Pilsen, her walls covered in maps and sketches of the subway. I showed her the journal, told her everything. Her face paled. "You found the choir," she said. "It's older than the city, older than us. The tunnels were built on its bones, and it feeds on voices, grief, guilt, fear. The symbols are its cage, but they're weakening. You've woken it. How do I stop it?" I asked, my voice shaking. Dolores handed me a pendant, a small stone carved with a spiral. Amos was my mentor. He tried to bind it, but it took him. "The pendant's part of the old ritual. You need to go back, carve the symbols into the pit's edge, and offer something, your voice, your memory, something you can't get back. But be careful. It'll try to keep you." I didn't want to go back, but the whispers were in my head now, drowning out my thoughts. I saw them in mirrors, shadowy figures with no faces, their mouths moving, wearing my brother's jacket, my mom's scarf. One night I woke in the tunnel, standing over the pit, my hand carving symbols I didn't understand, my voice humming a tune I didn't know. I ran, but the tunnel stretched, the voices laughing. Last night I went back to Clark/Lake, the pendant around my neck, a chisel and hammer in my bag. The hole was there, wider now, the whispers deafening. I crawled through the tunnel colder, the symbols pulsing like heartbeats. The chamber was larger, the pit deeper, its shadows writhing with faces. Amos, my mom, me. They reached for me, their hands cold, their mouths singing my sins. "You left him. You lied. Sing with us." I reached the pit, my hands trembling as I carved the symbols from Dolores's sketches. The pendant burned against my chest, and the voices screamed, the shadows lunging. My doppelganger emerged, its face mine but twisted, its eyes bleeding black. "You can't leave," it said, its voice my own. "You're ours." I carved faster, the symbols glowing, the pitch shaking. The doppelganger grabbed me, its touch burning, whispering my failures, my brother's anger, my mom's death, every regret. I screamed, not words but a raw primal sound, and drove the chisel into the final symbol. The pendant shattered and the pit collapsed, the shadows dissolving, the voices silenced. I woke on the Clark/Lake platform, my tools gone, my hands bloodied. My watch moved again, 3:18 a.m. I stumbled home, the whispers gone, but my voice was weaker, like I'd left part of it behind. Dolores was gone too. Her apartment empty, her maps vanished. The journal was blank, its pages clean. I don't work the tunnels anymore. I can't, but I hear it sometimes, a faint hum under the tracks, a whisper in the wind. I see them in crowds, faces with no mouths watching me. The subway's still hungry, and I'm not sure if I escaped or just bought time. I thought I'd silenced the choir. I thought carving those symbols into the pit's edge and shattering Dolores's pendant had sealed the tunnel and its voices forever. But Chicago's got a memory that doesn't fade, and the subway's veins run deeper than I realized. My name is Tara, and 3 weeks after I crawled out of that cursed tunnel beneath the Clark/Lake station, I'm still not free. The whispers are gone, but something worse has taken their place. A shadow that follows me, a weight that's sinking me into the city's dark. The first week after was quiet, too quiet. My apartment in Logan Square felt like a stranger's, the walls too close, the air too still. My voice was weaker, like I'd left half of it in the pit, and every word I spoke felt borrowed, like it wasn't mine. I quit my CTA job, told my supervisor I'd had a scare in the tunnels and couldn't go back. He didn't ask questions, just nodded, his eyes avoiding mine like he knew something he wouldn't say. I avoided the blue line, took buses or walked, even in the biting December cold. But Chicago's subway is the city's pulse, and you can't escape it. The rumble of trains vibrated through my floorboards. The screech of brakes echoed in my dreams. I started noticing things. Shadows in my peripheral vision, longer than they should be, moving when I turned to look. My mirror showed flickers of faces. Not mine, not the choir's, but others, strangers with eyes too wide, mouths too silent. One night, I found a CTA ticket stub on my kitchen counter, dated December 30th, 1903, stamped Clark/Lake Station. That date stuck in my head. 1903 was the year of the Iroquois Theater fire. Chicago's deadliest disaster, when 602 people burned or suffocated in a crowded downtown theater just blocks from Clark/Lake. I tore the ticket up, but the next morning it was back whole, smelling faintly of as my dreams were worse. I'd wake in the tunnel, not my bed, standing over the pit, my hands carving symbols I didn't understand, my voice humming that alien tune. The shadows in the pit had faces now, my brother, my mom, my doppelganger from the last time, but also others dressed in old-fashioned clothes, their eyes pleading, their mouths charred. I'd wake gasping, my throat raw, my hands smudged with soot. I couldn't explain that. I tried to move on. I applied for jobs, warehouses, retail, anything above ground, but every interview ended with me staring at the interviewer, convinced their face flickered into someone else's, someone from the tunnel. I stopped sleeping, kept the lights on, drank coffee until my hands shook, but the city wouldn't let me go. I'd see the symbols from the tunnel everywhere, etched into the pavement on Wabash Avenue, glowing faintly on the L tracks overhead, scratched into the glass of bus stops. Once, walking past the Chicago Theater, I saw the marquee flicker, the letters rearranging to spell "Join the Chorus." Desperate, I went back to Pilsen to find Dolores, hoping she'd left something behind, a clue, another pendant, anything. Her apartment was still empty, the walls bare, no trace of her maps or sketches. But I found a note tucked under a floorboard in her handwriting. The choir never sleeps. If you sealed it, you paid a price. If you hear it again, find the source. Look to the fire. The note mentioned a name, Elias Carver, a preacher who'd vanished after the Iroquois fire, rumored to have cursed the city for its sins. I dug into the fire's history at the Chicago Public Library, my hands trembling as I scrolled through microfilm. The Iroquois Theater burned on December 30, 1903, during a matinee performance of Mr. Bluebeard. The fire killed hundreds, mostly women and children, trapped by locked exits and a faulty asbestos curtain. Newspaper clippings mentioned strange reports, survivors hearing voices in the smoke, seeing figures that weren't there, claiming a preacher named Carver led a prayer as the theater burned, his words not in English but something older. One article quoted a survivor. He said the city would pay, that the ground was cursed. The theater was just 2 blocks from Clark/Lake, built on land that later became part of the subway's foundation. The connection chilled me. The tunnel, the choir, the 1903 ticket, they were tied to the fire. I remembered Amos Reed's journal, its warning about the tunnel wanting a voice. Had Carver's prayer opened something, bound it to the subway's tunnels? Was the choir his curse, feeding on the fire's victims and everyone after? I needed answers, but I was out of leads until I met him. I was at a diner on Randolph Street, nursing a coffee, when a man slid into the booth across from me. He was in his 40s, wiry, with a face like weathered stone and eyes that didn't blink enough. His clothes were odd, a wool coat too heavy for December, boots caked with ash. He introduced himself as Jonah, no last name, and said he'd been watching me since I'd left the tunnel. "You're marked," he said, his voice low like gravel. "I felt it the moment you came up. The choir's not done with you." I gripped my mug, my knuckles white. "How do you know about the choir?" Jonah leaned forward, his breath smelling of smoke. "I was there in '03. Not the fire, but after. I worked the cleanup, hauled debris from the theater. Found a tunnel under it, not on any map. Heard the voices. They took my brother. I've been chasing them since." I stared, my mind reeling. "That was over a century ago. How? Time's different down there," he said, cutting me off. "I got out, but not all the way. The choir keeps a piece of you. You're feeling it now, aren't you? The shadows, the tickets, the dreams." I nodded, my throat tight. "What do they want?" "Your voice," he said. "The choir's a collector. It takes grief, guilt, fear, binds them into its song. The fire woke it, gave it a taste. The subway's just its cage, but it's breaking. You sealed the pit, but you opened something else. I can help you close it, but it'll cost you." "What?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. Jonah's eyes darkened. "More than you paid last time. Meet me at Clark/Lake midnight. Bring the note." I didn't want to go back. The thought of those tunnels made my skin crawl, But Jonah's certainty, like Dolores's, hooked me. I spent the day researching Carver. I found a grainy photo in a 1903 Tribune archive. A gaunt man in a black coat, standing outside the burning theater, his eyes wild. The caption called him the Mad Preacher, claiming he'd been arrested for inciting panic but vanished from custody. A later article mentioned rumors of a cult, followers who believed Carver had summoned something to punish the city at midnight. I met Jonah at Clark/Lake. The station was empty, the air heavy with the smell of ash. The hole in the tunnel wall was there, wider now, the symbols glowing brighter. Jonah carried a satchel, its contents clinking, tools maybe or something older. "Stay close," he said, stepping through. "The choir's awake and it knows you're here." The tunnel was different, narrower, the walls pulsing like flesh, the symbols writhing under my flashlight's beam. The whispers were back, louder, not just calling my name but singing it. A hymn that made my head throb. Jonah moved with purpose, his boots leaving ashy footprints. "The fire's the key," he said. Carver's prayer wasn't a prayer, it was a summoning. He called the choir, bound it to the land. The tunnel's its heart, but it's spreading. We reached the chamber, but it was wrong. The pit was gone, replaced by a pool of black liquid that rippled without wind, reflecting faces. Amos, my mom, Carver, me. The air was thick with smoke, the smell of burning wood and flesh. The voices were a chorus now, not whispers but a roar, singing in that guttural tongue. Shadows rose from the pool, their forms shifting, women in long dresses, children with burned hands, Carver with his wild eyes, all singing my sins. "You failed. You lied. Sing." Jonah opened his satchel, pulling out a bundle of bones tied with wire, etched with symbols. "Carver's," he said. "Found them under the theater. We need to burn them, break the summoning. But the choir'll fight." The shadows lunged, their hands cold, their mouths gaping. I swung my flashlight, its beam cutting through them, but they reformed, their faces morphing into my brother's, my mom's, mine. Jonah lit a match, the flame flaring blue, and tossed it onto the bones. The pool erupted, black liquid rising like a wave, the voices screaming. My doppelganger emerged, its face charred, its eyes bleeding ash. "You can't leave," it said, its voice mine. "You're the chorus now." Jonah grabbed my arm, pulling me back. "Say your name," he shouted. "Hold on to it." "Tara," I gasped, the word weak but mine. The doppelganger screamed, its form cracking. Jonah threw more bones into the pool, chanting words that burned my ears. The chamber shook, the walls splitting, the liquid receding. The shadows dissolved, the voices fading, but my doppelganger lunged, its hands around my throat, its breath hot with ash. I screamed my name again, louder, and the pendant's fragments in my pocket burned. The doppelganger shattered, the pool collapsing into a crack in the floor. Jonah pushed me toward the tunnel, the chamber crumbling. We ran, the symbols fading, the air clearing. I stumbled onto the Clark/Lake platform, Jonah behind me, but when I turned, he was gone, his satchel empty, his footprints my phone buzzed, 3:18 a.m., time moving again. I staggered home, my voice weaker still, my hands smudged with soot. The ticket stub was gone, the mirrors clear, but I feel it, the choir's hum faint under the city's pulse. I see them in crowds, faces with no mouths watching. Jonah's gone like Dolores, and I'm not sure if I'm free or just another voice waiting to sing.